So I wanted to make this YouTube video on, certain things such as what happened today in Twitter, which affected me, you know, mental health wise. Because I tweeted this one tweet addressing to Black Twitter saying, you're better than this. Don't be so petty. And, drag Philip's nasty comments and say he deserved it or goodbye or celebration, celebrating that he died. And all of these mean things that I saw in Black Twitter. And I was like, you're better than this. He died. He's not going to listen to these tweets, right? He's not going to read these tweets. The people who are going to read these tweets are genuinely people who loved this person. And to be reading these messages or tweets is really not nice. It's called empathy. Regardless if what my grandfather is, if he was really nice to me and if I had lost him, then I wouldn't want to read about such kind of horrible tweets. So I just tweeted these out and I got swamped by Black Twitter people and Tamil people. First of all, they were like, oh, it's not blame, so do not even come to near me. And I go, so if it's like a Black people's oppression, Black Lives Matter, all of this, you want my input and say I stand with Black people, right? But I cannot address Black Twitter and condemn the behavior of saying nasty things on someone's death. That is just irony. And I said to myself, since I've been told by Black people that I should not intervene with their issues, I no longer will intervene with their issues, show my support, or anything of that sort. It is not being petty. I've been told so many times by Black people and other people, oh, do not is Black people's business. So Black Lives Matters is Black people's business. Black life being treated, how it's being treated in police in the UK. I don't have to say my opinion about this anymore because it's Black people's problem, right? So I'm out of that. That's what I'm trying to say here. And then we talked about, then it's moved on to one of the tweets that I tweeted. And this happened to me in the past. People say, they will compare, one of the person compared their skin tone to Preeti Zinta, right? And said, oh, she's not as fair as that person. And, she doesn't feel like she's pretty because she's not fair. And this whole idea of that, colorism and, I'm the darkest one in that group. And they all go, oh, because they're not fair, they're not pretty, but they are fair. They're fairer than me. So they don't think that I'm pretty. It is so obvious, it's indirectly saying that someone is not pretty because they just say that I'm not pretty because of this. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. You know what? I never was considered as to be, beautiful, right? So I'm like, okay, fair enough. So be it, I don't care. But these are the things that you grow up with, and when you see racism or you see colorism and you don't take necessarily take part in it, and I don't think that I'm better because I am the lighter skin shade in Sri Lankan Tamil community. For me, it doesn't make any sense at all. And it wasn't not something that my parents were like, you should be proud of, because what is skin tone at the end of the day? But I don't want to get into too much of detail on that side of things. So these people were like, oh, if you think you're ugly, say you are, but do not tell other Sri Lankan people are. I'm like, wow, you don't even get the context in which I'm saying these things. I'm a Sri Lankan Tamil person, and I'm saying that if you're a Sri Lankan, you're precious because you're not either you're not a brown person, or you're the lowest of the hierarchy that is Pakistani, Indians being the prettiest, or and if you're Indian and then Pakistani, so on, right? So you are in that lowest form of ladder, and that is the whole point of that tweet. It's you hear this as an insult, and then you go you're always an outsider when you're trying to talk to Indian people, not Indian people from here, I'm talking about people from back, from India. and they think that Sri Lankan people are really dark because the cricketers are. And it may be, it is the truth, but the cricketers, they are predominantly people who actually um from a very low income background. They're not rich people like what you see in Indian team. And their whole idea is that Sri Lankan people are not really good, and they talk about like the bowler, the Sri Lankan bowler, or like Muralidharan, for instance, like, oh, these cricketers are not good looking compared to the Indian ones. That's the idea that they have, and then when they say it, they're indirectly saying that Sri Lankan people are not good looking. And I heard that, and obviously I know what they mean. I'm not going to defend myself because that's their opinion, and everyone should have the right to have their opinion on who they find it attractive or beautiful or pretty or whatever the standards, because it's theirs. But it is just for me to vent on my Twitter profile what I heard and how I feel like being an outsider in every single possible, you know, groups that I think like, I go and then I'm still an outsider. And when you feel that way and people were to take this and blow it out of proportion and say such a nasty things, I made a video addressing these people saying, you know what, I can show my face like without wearing makeup, can you? Because if you cannot, then you cannot talk about self-love, because you do not accept you as a person self-love calling and go without makeup or post something without makeup. Because how can you love yourself and say I need makeup to be confident? It's a bit hypocritical. Like, if you don't understand that, I don't know what else to say. That it's just a laughable matter. Like, you need think about it, right? I mean, like, oh, blue's eyes are not pretty, but I'm gonna wear blue eyes, like contact lenses, because that makes me confident. I don't know. I'm just saying it's an example, an analogy. Like, all I'm trying to say is that I realize that, I am not like Tamil people abroad. I am not them. I cannot relate to them in any way possible, like in any way possible, to be honest. It's my upbringing. And if I had any kids, most likely they would be brought up the same way with the values and teachings that my parents taught me. And I am genuinely afraid about future. And the Prabhakaran, like, people are like, I'm socialist and I support equality and I am against casteism and all of these things. And yet, so many times that you people, Canadian Tamil people, are so obsessed with brands and everything is about, brand and brand and brand. You're just making me laugh. Like, please, like, if you don't understand what does brands means, like, that is your worth, that's you being lit or you being cool because you can afford that, that itself is against socialism, because that comes under capitalism. And when you talk about casteism, imagine the people from Sri Lanka right now in poor, people like poor people, and you're in Canada earning your wage like a lot more comparable to Sri Lanka. And if you were to invest your money on properties and these people still stay poor, casteism, your children would inherit those properties and thus becoming wealth owners, which is same as casteism, because they're not going to be like, I'm going to go and date someone really, really poor and get to know that person because I'm against, money or capitalism, because they will never have the chance, and they would want to date someone who are very similar to them. And that's what's happening in modern times in Sri Lankan community as well. People just marry people because they are have the same vibes, or they want the similar things, and they want to be rich or like get rich, and like, all of these things. Like, have you thought about this? Like, if you were to think about this too deeply, you realize how hypocritical you individual people are, and then you come and complain to me, or like you say nasty things to me, and then somehow I have to accept it. Like, no, at least I'm not a coward. Like, all of you are cowards, and I don't want to be friends with cowards. Or I don't even want to know people who are cowards.